BioBalance Healthcast episode 225, Testosterone Replacement for Women.
BioBalance Healthcast features conversations about positive aging. Your hosts are Dr. Kathy Maupin, Medical Director of BioBalance Health and a leading expert in treating symptoms of aging, and Brett Newcomb, a licensed professional counselor.
Welcome to the BioBalance Healthcast. Almost a year ago, we published our book, The Secret Female Hormone. And about a month after the book was published, Kathy got an invitation to come and speak to the Age Management Medicine Group, which was an international conference being held in Orlando, Florida. And they asked her to give a presentation on what she does and why she does it. And so what we thought we'd do in this week's podcast is go through parts of that presentation, because it was provided as information for physicians and nurse practitioners who are on the cutting edge of medicine. And so there was a lot of technical information in it, but we want to break that down and talk to you about what hormone replacement is all about, why it's being done, why it's helpful. So we're going to start with the introduction that Kathy gave to the conference, and then we'll have her talk about why she chose to begin the way she did.
I had my ovaries out because of endometriosis, and that was back in 2002. And it was a devastating thing, because when I woke up, I wasn't myself. And that had a lot to do with not having any hormones at all. I have terrible problems with even getting out of bed, no motivation. I gained 20 pounds in a month. I didn't think the same. My mental capacity was bad. So I have gone to everyone in our area, and they called me lazy, fat, crazy. I was sent to psychiatrists, and now I have patients that tell me the same thing, the same rigmarole. I didn't find anybody who was doing testosterone treatment or even estrogen in a bioidentical fashion that worked back in 2002.
My talk obviously was about testosterone and not just hormone replacement, because our book is about testosterone, the secret female hormone. So the people at this conference wanted to know about why it was so important, how to treat patients, and they needed my story, obviously, to have them identify with me both as a physician and a patient.
And a woman.
But
who receives testosterone.
Right.
Because testosterone is still primarily thought of as a male hormone.
And there are many lectures at these conferences about testosterone in men.
Right.
But there are not that many women who have gone through this who also are talking about testosterone for women.
So this organization wanted some balancing information about women to add to the value of the conference.
Importance of testosterone for women, and
Yes.
that's what it was called.
Okay. So you described in the video and in your speech how badly your system was malfunctioning and how your life as you had lived it was collapsing around you. And nobody offered any help. Nobody had any ideas until you found this treatment. And then you go on to say, miraculously, almost immediately, you were better.
And I was.
I was better so fast. But people without ovaries feel better really fast because they are miserable. So I slept for the first time in years that first night of after having the pellets, and I thought it was going to be, that must be placebo effect, but I've been sleeping ever since. And before that I had terrible migraines. I couldn't go to work. They carried me out. Every week I'd go out a couple times, they'd have to cancel patients. That's a horrible thing for a physician, and I was on call as well then.
AMMG is a international group of doctors. I think it's over 10,000 doctors all over the world who do age management medicine. And so when I was talking to these doctors, some of them were there for the first time. And they're there for what's new in medicine, how can we take care of patients better, how can we treat their symptoms. So when I was giving them the list of symptoms and descriptions, that was familiar to them, but they may never have thought of it as a woman's illness. And my purpose was to give them the list of symptoms, and when they hear it, say, oh, that could be low testosterone, instead of instead of saying, oh, that could be depression
or you're just getting old.
Or you're just getting old.
That's a part of getting old.
Yeah, like they told me, you're lazy,
Yeah.
fat, and crazy. So just get used to it and enjoy the rest of your 50 years that you're probably going to live.
So one of the underlying concepts then of age management medicine has to do with the fact that we're living longer than we ever have before. More and more and more of us are living
Absolutely.
longer lives. And medicine isn't used to that. People aren't used to that. And so we don't know what to expect. What is normal aging and what is good interventional medicine that will retain quality of life? So that as you were describing in the earlier part, how debilitating aging was becoming for you as your system stopped producing the hormones that it had always produced, and the impact of that on your life. The question becomes, can we treat that? Can we reverse that? Can we manage our lives in a way to avoid it? And that's what these doctors are focused on as a group, to try to find ways to do that successfully.
Specifically, how do you live a longer health span
Yes.
with a very short sick part before you die?
Yeah.
We're not stopping people from dying necessarily, and that's not the point. The point is quality of life.
Well, yeah, there's some studies out there that show that almost 2/3 of the total dollars spent on healthcare in your lifetime happened in the last 6 months of your life.
And I contend that it would be a lot less money if we were healthier all the way to that point.
Yes.
And that if that span of disease
Well,
wasn't big.
Not only
it
less
was
money,
a short,
less misery.
less pain.
We all know old people that we watch them like hobble through the airport because they can't walk.
I know,
or
that was-
follow them up or down a flight of stairs or into an elevator or at a restaurant or even when they're driving, because their reflexes and awareness is just more limited than it once was. And for those of us who aren't suffering so much from that yet, that's irritating and frustrating.
It's also scary because you
see it coming.
You say that could be happening to me.
Yes.
So the whole point is let's not let this happen to us. And if it does, it'll be a very short period of time.
So in terms of your miracle, the replacement of testosterone for you, a woman getting testosterone, what are the functions of testosterone? You were saying in the clip that it's the same for men as it is for women, but let's review what those functions are. What does testosterone have to do with sex drive and orgasm?
Well, it is actually, sex drive and orgasm are actually hormonal. If you don't have testosterone in general, most people, and we're talking about the majority of the population, are not going to have orgasms, and they're not going to desire sex. They won't even be accepting of it. So
that's not driven by love and romance. I love my wife,
honestly,
I care for my wife, but if I don't have a certain level of hormones, my body's not going to go, oh, hello.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. You can love somebody, but not love them sexually. But marriage is a sexual relationship. That's
way we
one thing
understand it in
that
our
makes
culture.
it
Yeah.
different in our culture than any other friendship. So that is key to relationships. We know it is for men, and now we need to accept the reality that it is for women as well.
So, restful sleep. I remember before my wife started receiving testosterone replacements, that she would wake up in the middle of the night just in a sweat. I mean, the sheets would be wet, she would be wet, her hair would be wet, and she would be mad. I mean, she'd like glare at me, and it'd be like,
It's all your
It's
fault."
so hot, and we'd fight over the temperature in the room. We're going to run the fans, we're going to turn the air conditioner colder, and this was an every night occasion for several years.
Well,
so she didn't sleep well.
No, and I didn't either. And I'd always slept well my whole life. I mean, I could sit against that wall over there and just wait for surgery, cross my arms over, go to sleep for 15 minutes while they were getting the room ready for surgery. I'm sitting on the floor sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean,
You train
I could
yourself
sleep
to that, though,
anywhere.
in medical
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, you don't get
because
to
you run
sleep
those
at
long
all.
sessions as a resident.
So it was necessary for me to sleep
Yeah.
anywhere so that I could actually catch enough to do the next day.
Yeah, soldiers do the same thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they learn, and you have to sleep wherever you can.
But sleep disturbance is not just the hot flashes, because I had this long before menopause.
Okay.
I had this during my early 40s when my testosterone dropped, because there's two things that wake women up as they get between 40 and 55, and that's testosterone loss, which causes you to wake up because you can't get into the last couple stages of sleep. So you go 1, 2, wake up, no 3, 4, 1, 2. There's some controversy, you may go 2, 1.
Yeah.
to one, but you don't get
You don't
into
get
the
into
last
deep
stages,
REM sleep.
deep stages of sleep, so you don't feel rested.
Yeah.
The other is hot flashes, which is usually estrogen loss or testosterone loss that can give you the flashes. That's what Phyllis was experiencing.
Oh, I told her I thought it was just a guilty conscience, but she swore it wasn't.
And that just makes us madder.
That's not helpful.
That is not
We
helpful.
offer those non-medical
Yeah.
interpretations. All right. What about immune functions? Does testosterone have anything to do with helping protect you from getting
That's why
different
we
illnesses?
when we lose our testosterone, we lose our protection from our T cells, which are the ones that gobble up cancer cells. So after testosterone drops, it increases our rates of cancer. It increases our rates of having life-threatening pneumonia. I mean, why would people have immunization after 65 for Pneumovax or a pneumonia vaccine, but not our whole lives? Because our immune system stinks after we're in our 60s. We probably should get it a little earlier if we're not taking testosterone. But with testosterone, we can fight off all of these things, viruses and bacteria, as well as cancer. So testosterone stimulates the immune system, more T cells, and they're more active. So and also more B cells, which make the immunoglobulins that kill off bacteria and viruses.
So watching the news and reading some of the mass media publications that are out there, I find articles all the time that talk about be careful about hormone replacement because there's an additional risk of various kinds of cancers, prostate cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer. What's the scoop on that? Is there really an increased risk if you get testosterone replaced?
No, actually. Actually, your risk.
The simple
answer is no. Testosterone decreases your risk of cancers. Now, there is a belief that prostate cancer is caused by high testosterone or testosterone high levels. However, it's been proven that men who have low testosterone levels,
Right.
or have dropped their testosterone levels, that's when they begin the cancers. Now, you may get replacement after that, but that's not what caused it. So it is the low testosterone that begins the process.
For prostate, for men. What about breast cancer and ovarian
breast
cancer?
cancer is not related has not even been related to testosterone. It is actually given to patients who have breast cancer to help them fight the cancer cells. And there are several studies. I have the references in our book about that.
Okay.
So it improves that. It also improves autoimmune diseases. So that's one of the ways that, and one of the reasons I have so many patients that come in with autoimmune disorders, because testosterone modifies the system. It doesn't just elevate it, it modulates it, and it makes it work normally.
Which brings me to another question or issue but that's real personal, and it has to do with my wife. Again, bone function as you age. Bones begin to deteriorate. You get osteopenia and osteoporosis, and you shrink, and you get bowed over, and you're brittle and fragile. And that's one of the reasons that old people fall and break something, then they get pneumonia and die.
You can fall a lot if your bones are thick and not break anything, but you'll break something if your bones are brittle. If you fall.
So how do we avoid brittle bones? How do we avoid that deterioration process in our bone structure if we can?
Well, you always have to have the vitamin D and calcium to actually build a bone, but beyond that, why do we get osteoporosis? We get osteoporosis because we have low estrogen and low testosterone levels, and men will get it as well, especially if they've taken corticosteroids throughout their life. That increases the loss of bone.
So what's a corticosteroid?
It's like prednisone or any kind of steroid, not testosterone, but any other kind of steroid from the adrenal gland.
To bulk up for working out kind of thing? Athletes?
Yes. They can.
So they're going to be more susceptible.
Yes. But unless they had testosterone as well. Now, testosterone helps build bone. So as testosterone drops, bone loss occurs. So as we age, and if we don't replace our testosterone and our estrogen for women, then our bones get thinner and thinner. And Phyllis was the perfect example that 2 years after pellets,
Yeah, actually, yes, that was miraculous.
her bones were back to normal, and
Her
she had been
gynecologist was so
osteopenia.
surprised because he had her. He said, "You've got a degenerative bone condition in your family." He treated both my wife, her sister, her mom, and so your family has this problem, women in it, and so you're going to get more brittle. You're going to, as a matter of fact, you already have osteopenia. and you're almost to the
severe
borderline
osteoporosis.
of osteoporosis. I mean, just marginal difference. So she's been on this treatment for 2 years, and he hasn't had anything to say about it. He just smiles at her and goes, "Oh, you're still doing that." So then last month she went in and had her bone density test, and she is back in the normal range. I mean, its restorative power really surprised him.
But all these
he
other
said,
symptoms are
"What
gone
are you
too."
doing again?
But all these other symptoms are
Yes,
gone too.
yes,
He didn't
more
ask
than-
her that when all
no,
the
he did
symptoms
not.
were gone, which is that's why I was trying to heighten the awareness of this group of symptoms. I'm just going to be concise and have the whole list together. Testosterone actually helps energy, decreases your risk of diabetes, decreases, of course, the cancers. It also stimulates your metabolism so that you can make muscle, burn fat, become leaner, get your waistline back. That's what I was talking about there. The bladder is very sensitive to testosterone, and people who have bladder issues, they come in and they say, "Well, I have urine loss all the time." It could be that your bladder's
when
swollen.
they cough or when they sneeze,
Right.
And then as they get older, they have problems regulating the flow to make it happen. And there are other things that people say, "Oh, well, that's for men, your prostate. You know, you're having problems with that." But I mean, it depends is a huge cash cow.
I
in the
know, and
United
I'd
States.
love to shut that down. but most women who come to see me who have urine loss that didn't start with their last child, that started as they aged, not just because if it started with your last child and you had a difficult delivery, it could be literally falling down.
Right.
But if it's not that bad, testosterone can tighten up. It builds collagen, it tightens up all the support structures, and it thickens the lining of the urethra so you don't just lose urine all the time.
Okay.
So it makes you young again. In your bottom becomes young again, basically, and your bladder is part of the structures that are in your pelvis with your uterus and ovaries. So the bladder becomes young again as well, and you don't have as much risk as a woman with urine loss. Now, for men, most of the men that I've treated over time, they initially get a slight enlargement, more enlargement, or a slight enlargement of the prostate at first. And then after about 6 months to a year, the prostate starts shrinking. So then they pass urine easier. It's not generally, if there's no scarring, it's not generally something that continues. It's awesome. I mean, it would put so many different businesses, that nursing homes, depends. I mean, it's not going to change a hearing aid or glass or eyesight,
Right.
but it's
But some of the ancillary products for the elderly.
that none of us look forward to.
No.
This testosterone works for women as well as men in this way.
So then let's talk about the mechanism of action. How does it work? I mean, you can make all of these claims, but some people are curious to say, well, how does that work? You know, why doesn't something else? For instance, they have a medicine that you can take to help you urinate more comfortably if you have an enlarged prostate. They have medicines that women can take and men to resist bone density issues. But those come with side effects that are sometimes pretty debilitating.
And the bone isn't,
worried about
Fosamax
it.
doesn't make really thick bone. It just looks good on x-ray. So, I mean, it's really not making you sturdier. It just looks better when you x-ray it.
So it makes your bones more photogenic.
Yeah, really. But
Got really nice looking
But
bones.
that's the way they judge
Right.
medicines for osteoporosis. But in reality, testosterone makes the thickest, best bones. And in general, boys, men have thicker bones when they start out with because they've got 10 times the testosterone as women.
So at the conference, you talked a little bit about the mechanism of action for testosterone replacement. So let's take a look at that clip.
The mechanism of action depends on the tissue, depends on the androgen receptor, and it depends on how it turns the tissue on. So the mechanism of action is anabolic activity. We know that. Everybody who's female knows that we make more muscle when we have our testosterone, and as we get older, we don't have as defined muscles, and we get more fat in the muscles, like marbling in a steak. It's lovely. Then it's a vasodilator, so that's why it helps men have erections and helps us prepare for sex by swelling. It's an immune stimulator, which is great because as we get older, our immune system tanks. And so this is something to help your immune system come back. That's why we give testosterone to AIDS patients, because it stimulates their immune system so that they can fight cancers. It's not because we want to make them happy. It's because we are trying to make them not get yet another problem as a cancer. So for us, aging, our immune system's going down. Why don't we bump it up a little bit? And this is one of the good things testosterone does for us. Bone growth. All these drugs that we have for bones, it's not making good bone. We've had lots of lectures about this in the past. Give testosterone instead of all of those medicines. They're expensive. They don't make strong bone. They make brittle bone. And people still break their hip. It's useless. It looks great on x-ray. That's it. So we're treating the x-ray. So instead, if you replace testosterone and or estrogen in women, you can build great bone. And that's much more important than saying, oh yeah, I gave this woman Fosamax to your drug rep.
We've covered a lot of ground today, and it's time to wrap this up. But we're going to come back next week and talk more about your presentation. There's so much more information that you presented, and it was really well received. And
I could have talked for 3 hours, which is
you
a problem if you're, or more, if you've got.
Well, but you had
minutes.
a whole cluster of people that approached you after your speech, and you were more than a half hour getting out of the room.
At least, yeah.
And so there are a lot of physicians out there who don't have this information. It's one of the reasons we do podcasts. What we encourage you to do is get a copy of our book or take our podcast, send the link of our podcast to your doctor when you have one of these concerns and they don't seem to know what to do with it. And ask them, could you consider this? Is this information that you could verify, that you could look up, or that you dismiss? And some doctors are not going to be responsive to that because truly their jobs are overwhelming in terms of time demands. But some may be open to it, and it's worth asking. So thank you for listening, and come back next time to hear more about the way testosterone can make you better and make you age better.
Email your questions or comments to podcast@biobalancehealth.com. You can find the BioBalance Healthcast on iTunes and on YouTube. For more information about bioidentical hormone pellet therapy and other reverse aging solutions, visit biobalancehealth.com or call 314-993-0963. You can find Dr. Maupin on Twitter at Dr. Kathy Maupin and on Facebook at facebook.com/biobalancehealth. Find Brett Newcomb at brettnewcomb.com.